By now, most of you are probably familiar with the Holy Thursday Massacre, an event taking place on April 6, 2023, in which FWC law enforcement officers brutally killed over 30 pet snakes, including a legally owned pregnant female boa constrictor. This incident appeared nowhere on the agenda for the May FWC Commission meeting. In fact, on the first day of the meeting, until it was brought up in public comments, it hadn't been mentioned even once.
And that's a worldwide news event, and it's probably one of the worst stories ever to involve this commission, and it hasn't been mentioned a single time yet this meeting. It wasn't addressed in the executive director's report, and it's what a lot of people here are interested in hearing about.
Well, if they're interested, you're going to hear about it tomorrow, because it's on for tomorrow.
Yeah, it just seemed like you might want to show more interest in that in the executive director's report.
Well, I think it's easy for you to spew your comments, but you don't know all the facts. You don't know all the facts.
That's right, because FWC has not even released all the body cam we've requested.
You're going to get some facts tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Colonel Young, we had an incident that we were called in. We euthanized some snakes. And I think we owe it to the public to kind of, as much as, we're allowed to talk about it, I don't know if there's any legal action going on, but let's clear the record on some of that so that the public has that.
On the second day of the meeting, Colonel Young briefed the public on the Holy Thursday Massacre. His explanation did not differ significantly from the official statement FWC put out shortly after the incident took place. He admitted that the agency was responsible for the mistaken killing of the boa constrictor and that there were problems with their euthanasia process.
While investigators were euthanizing the relinquished snakes, a legally permitted boa constrictor owned by another captive wildlife permittee was euthanized by mistake. That was an accident. That was on us. We made a mistake. We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again. I have put a directive to all of our investigators and staff that we will not be euthanizing any animals at this point unless it's in exigent circumstances in the field regarding something else. There were some also training gaps identified in the euthanization process. That is one of the reasons why we will no longer be doing this until we can firm up that gap and close that gap and ensure that our investigators and officers are properly trained to handle that or find some other facility or process to do that. So basically, in a nutshell, that's where we're at. And again, there's been a lot of misinformation. We own the fact that there were some mistakes made. The euthanization process, and again, the misidentification and the killing of the boa instead of.
Commissioner?
Were these snakes pets?
No. So the 32, or I get my numbers correct. The reticulated pythons were not pets. They were under the permit of commerce. So they were commerce. They were not held under pet permits. So they were not pets.
We're killing the dude's pets.
So sit down, please. We don't take. You can sign up. You can speak. So when you come up, I just can't have people shouting out at us. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
This report did not appear on the public agenda, nor do we know whether it had been planned before it was brought up in comments the day prior. In the agenda item containing Colonel Young's statement, no public comment on the massacre topic was allowed. The commenter that stood up during the briefing later explained himself during public comment on the whitelist topic.
Before I start, Chairman Bretto, I wasn't trying to interrupt your meeting. I have read the rules about meetings, and it says I can speak if you recognize me. I was looking to be recognized. I understand you didn't do that. There was a bunch of stuff I was going to put in here in the 3-minute speech that I wrote out in the last 2 weeks that was good about FWC, but I'm cutting all that out because I got 2 minutes. The Yellow Anaconda ban kicked off the additional
Colonel Young did later clarify during items not on the agenda what was meant by exigent circumstances.
So,
what would those circumstances be?
Side of the road issues with animals that get hit or something like that. So we're not talking about all captive. We're talking about all wildlife. So there's cases where officers have to do that. They have no choice for law enforcement purposes. Obviously.
Here are a few highlights from public comments on the Holy Thursday Massacre. These comments were only allowed at the very end of the meeting during items not on the agenda. It should be noted that there were more speakers that were interested in commenting on this item, but there was some confusion as to where to sign up since this was not an item that was actually on the agenda.
The line from what happened on April 6th can be traced directly from what happened in February of 2021 with the prohibited species regulations. People were led to believe that they would not lose their animals, that if you had these animals, and multiple commissioners, you guys said that nobody's going to lose your pets, and Melissa Tucker said that.
You know, listen, this whole notion that there's some massacre happened, okay? You guys are taking it a little too far.
No, I don't think so at all.
Hold on,
what would you call
somebody
coming in and killing a bunch of animals without reason?
It was, first of all, first and foremost, I guarantee you that this agency doesn't euthanize. When's the last time we euthanized something? Give me, this is like, I don't want this notion that this is happening every day in Florida. It's not, okay? It's an isolated incident. It's an isolated incident, and you're pounding this to make it look like we do this. It's like our daily routine. It's not our daily routine, okay? So let's get off that notion, please.
Were there iguanas euthanized the week before that happened?
I have no clue. Okay?
The answer, as far as we can tell, is yes.
And I don't need all the cat calling in the audience. If that's the case, we're just going to call the meeting off, okay? You asked for a report yesterday. I told you it was already on the agenda for today. We gave it. Let's move on.
But as far as what happened to Chris Coffey, you guys destroyed his life over the course of 14 months. He was a successful breeder. He wanted to be grandfathered in. He considered these his pets. He was charged. The case was dismissed weeks before this happened, but you constructively seized his animals. He was left with these animals with nothing to do with them, except you have to keep them. And if you don't, we're going to arrest you. So he's been operating under that assumption that he was going to be arrested. And
okay,
he didn't just call in FWC to kill his animals.
Your time's up.
That's not how that
Your time's
happened.
up, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think everyone can admit there were some mistakes made on April 6th, and I hope we can learn from those and move forward on this. So one of the mistakes I would like to point out is in 2021, commissioners were presented with data from staff that only about a dozen people in the state were working with reticulated pythons and or Burmese pythons. None of those dozen people were grandfathered and allowed to continue business, even though in the example of Chris Coffey, he had had permits and had been licensed by FWC for over a decade. So if we had just allowed him to be grandfathered and continue doing business as long as he was in compliance, April 6th never would have happened.
The massacre really didn't need to happen if staff would have been working more with industry. They could have reached out to industry and said, we have these animals in the state that are not supposed to be here. They're prohibited. There's an issue of getting them out. Reach out to the industry. Let us work with you. Instead of just euthanizing these animals, there are people that really want them. There's zoos, there's places. I could have made calls and had them out of the state by morning. It would have been very easy.
If you utilize us, we will help. We all want the same thing. But one thing that I would say is we don't want to feel heard. We want to be listened to.
Now, so let us come euthanize your snakes or we will arrest you is not the same as please come euthanize my snakes.
I don't know if anyone else here is an animal health professional, but I am. I'm a veterinarian. And what happened on April 6th, it's nowhere near humane. Those animals were all captive animals. They may have been prohibited species, I get it, but they're captive. So contrary to what some may think, they were pets, and they should have never been killed that way. They should have been, as the AVMA states, they should have been offered some of the options for captive/pets. And that was not what happened.
I mean, many of us have seen this, this body cam video. You go up to a tank that has a boa in it, points and says that's a boa, and less than 5 minutes later the boa is dead. I see that, and I don't know if it's incompetence, but somebody who should be in charge of doing that should know what they're even looking at. If anyone who looks and knows what they're talking about and what they're doing would know that it's absolutely ridiculous what happened.
Hello again. Executive Director Young's earlier statements correctly and clearly stated that Chris Coffey's animals were seized by FWC, a seizure that happened 14 months prior to the snakes being euthanized. Chris was made to keep FWC seized snakes for 14 months in a facility that doesn't, to what I've seen, even comply with current prohibited species rules, at great personal cost to himself and under extreme emotional duress. I'll take Executive Director Young's word that Chris Coffey actually asked for his snakes to be euthanized, even though no proof of this exchange has been made available to the public to date. But that's irrelevant. In no way was FWC obligated to comply, nor should they have, with any such request. They weren't even his snakes for over a year at that point.
I speak here to express my deep concerns regarding the Chairman, Rodney Barreto, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Under his tenure, the FWC has demonstrated a concerning level of incompetence and authoritarian approach that cannot be overlooked. One distressing aspect in the FWC's practice of making up rules and enforcing them through their own law enforcement officers, this lack of transparency and accountability raises doubts about the fairness and objectivity of their actions, undermining the principles of justice and due process that this country was founded on.
I want to start with a quote from February 25th, 2001. On that day, Commissioner Barreto said the following, and I quote, "I want to make sure the public is aware that if you currently own one of these reptiles, you are allowed to keep it till its death. So no one is telling you you have to get rid of your pet or euthanize it. No one from the state is going to take it away from you." As a member of that public, Commissioner Barreto, I heard what you had to say. I took to heart what you said, Commissioner.
After the events of Thursday, April 6, 2023, now known as the Holy Thursday Massacre, the day that the very thing you said wouldn't happen actually happened, you once again proved yourself to be a liar, and we can't trust you. If you and your fellow commissioners had a single shred of integrity, each of you would step down from your appointed positions as FWC commissioners immediately. Thank you.
Following a relentless onslaught of harsh criticism, even Chairman Barreto seemed contrite and reflective.
I'm not going to say, I'm just going to say that we maybe in reflecting on when we euthanized the snakes, maybe we could have done it differently. That's subject to debate. The optics doesn't look good, okay? We get it. You can see the passion coming from the folks who talked. I'm an animal lover, I'm a dog owner, you know, I've had my share of reptiles and turtles and snakes and gerbils. I mean, I have kids, come on. So we hear you. You know, it's funny, it reminded me, we started MC Days in Miami-Dade County. So if you had a pet, whether it was a snake, whatever kind of pet, and if you wanted it, you brought it to the zoo and they examined it and then they found it a new home. You know, so I get it. And I get, you know, not everybody, you know, who, you know, it looks really good when it's small and little. As it gets bigger, it becomes unmanageable, and that's part of the problem with some of these pets. That's a reality, okay? But I think we heard a lot. I know the staff, I saw a lot of nods there while people spoke, are going to address a lot of the issues. I saw people taking a lot of notes, which is really comforting. George?
In short, due to overwhelming pressure from the reptile community and global press coverage, FWC has admitted that some mistakes were made and has issued a directive halting euthanasia of captive animals. However, it appears that this directive is open-ended, and it's up to all of us to continue to hold FWC accountable into the future.